The sauna door hissed shut behind me, sealing us in a cocoon of heat and steam so thick I could barely see his face. But I felt him, Michael, my best friend's dad, standing too close, his breath uneven, like he was fighting something bigger than himself. Then he whispered, and the world I thought I knew shattered into 1,000 pieces. I'm Ethan Carter, 24, a graphic designer scraping by in Denver, where the mountains loom like silent judges over every choice I make. That night, I wasn't supposed to be here, in this ritzy resort sauna high in the Rockies, surrounded by cedar walls and the kind of quiet that makes your thoughts scream. I was only tagging along with my best friend, Lucas, for his family's annual winter getaway, a tradition I'd dodged for years because, frankly, their wealth made me feel like an outsider. But Lucas insisted, said it'd be low-key, just skiing, hot cocoa, and catching up. He didn't mention his dad had other plans. Michael Callahan, Lucas's father, was the kind of man who commanded a room without trying. Late 40s, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that could cut glass and gray eyes that saw through you. He was a contractor, built half the luxury cabins in Colorado, and carried himself like he'd earned every inch of his success. To me, he'd always been Mr. Callahan, distant, polite, the guy who'd toss me a beer at barbecues and ask about my art with a nod that felt like a pat on the head. But lately, something had shifted. A lingering glance, a hand on my shoulder that stayed too long. I chalked it up to my imagination. I mean, he was straight, married, a dad, untouchable. Until that night in the sauna. It started innocently enough. Lucas and I had spent the day skiing, my legs burning from trying to keep up with his reckless runs down the black diamond slopes. By evening, I was done sore, freezing, and craving the sauna Lucas raved about. It's the best part of the resort, he'd said, but he bailed to meet some girl from the lodge bar, leaving me to navigate the spa alone. I wandered through the resort's polished halls, past chandeliers and roaring fireplaces, until I found the men's spa. The sauna was tucked in a corner, all sleek wood and frosted glass, the air heavy with eucalyptus. I stepped inside, towel wrapped around my waist, expecting solitude. But Michael was there, alone, sitting on the top bench, his head tilted back, eyes closed. Steam curled around him like a halo, his chest rising and falling with slow, deliberate breaths. I froze, suddenly hyper-aware of my own heartbeat. Ethan, he said without opening his eyes, his voice low, like he'd been waiting for me. Didn't expect you here. Just needed to warm up, I mumbled, sitting on the lower bench, keeping my distance. The heat pressed against my skin, but it was his presence that made the air feel too thick to breathe. We sat in silence for a minute, maybe two, the kind of silence that feels like a conversation waiting to happen. I stole a glance at him, his strong arms resting on his knees, the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the way his towel clung to his hips. My face burned, and not from the steam. Lucas, did you? He asked, finally looking at me. His eyes were sharp, searching, like he was trying to read something I hadn't written yet. Yeah, some girl at the bar, I said, forcing a laugh. Typical. He didn't laugh back. Instead, he stood, crossed the small space, and sat beside me, closer than he needed to. The bench creaked under his weight. You're not like him, he said, almost to himself. Never have been. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt dry, my mind racing to decode his words. Was it a compliment? A jab? Before I could respond, he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Ethan, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been carrying for years. My heart stopped. The sauna, the resort, the whole damn world faded away, leaving just his voice and the weight of what was coming. The steam seemed to thicken, wrapping us in a haze that blurred the edges of reality. Michael's gray eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "I've been watching you," he said, each word deliberate, like he was testing the waters of a truth he'd buried deep. I shifted on the bench, my skin prickling not just from the heat, but from the way his voice carried a weight I couldn't name. "Watching me," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to laugh it off, to pretend this was just Mr. Callahan being his usual intense self. But the air between us crackled with something else. Something dangerous. He leaned back, running a hand through his damp hair, the muscles in his arm flexing under the dim light. "Not like that," he said quickly, as if he'd heard my thoughts. You're different, Ethan. The way you carry yourself. The way you see the world. I've noticed it since you were a kid, tagging along with Lucas. Always sketching. Always thinking. You've got this fire in you, but you hide it." I swallowed hard, unsure if I was flattered or unnerved. "I'm just me," I said, shrugging, but my heart was pounding. Michael wasn't the type to throw around compliments, and this felt like more than that, like he was peeling back layers I didn't know I had. He stood abruptly, pacing the small space, the towel shifting slightly with each step. "I'm not good at this," he muttered, almost to himself. Never had to say it out loud before. He stopped, facing me again, his expression raw, unguarded. "I'm not who you think I am, Ethan. I've been lying to Lucas, to Sarah, to myself for years." Sarah, his wife, Lucas's mom. The woman who'd baked me cookies when I was 15 and stayed over at their house after my parents' fights got too loud. My stomach twisted. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He sat again, closer this time, his knee brushing mine. The contact sent a jolt through me, and I hated how much I noticed it. "I'm saying I'm tired of pretending," he said. "Tired of living a life that doesn't feel like mine. I've spent decades building this family. Business. Reputation, but it's a cage. And you," he paused, his eyes searching mine. "You make me want to break free." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The sauna's heat was nothing compared to the fire in his words, the way they burned through every assumption I'd ever had about him. Michael Callahan, the man who'd coached Lucas's little league team, who'd built a life so solid it seemed unbreakable, was unraveling in front of me. And I was caught in the middle, torn between fear and a pull I didn't want to name. "Mr. Callahan," I started, but he cut me off. "Michael," he said firmly. "Call me Michael." "Okay, Michael," I said, testing the name. It felt strange, intimate, like crossing a line I hadn't seen until now. "Why are you telling me this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out, his hand hovering near my arm, then dropping back to his side, like he'd thought better of it. "Because you're the only one who might understand," he said finally. "You're out, Ethan. You've been yourself. No apologies. No masks. I've watched you live the life I couldn't. And it kills me." The confession hit like a punch. I'd come out at 19, after years of wrestling with who I was. And yeah, it hadn't been easy. Me dad still barely looked at me when I visited home, but I'd done it. I'd built a life where I could breathe. And now Michael was saying he'd been watching, envying, maybe even wanting that freedom. Wanting me. I don't know what to say, I admitted, my voice shaking. You're Lucas's dad. You're married. This is wrong," he finished, his voice sharp but pained. "I know. Believe me, I know. But I can't keep pretending it's not there. Not anymore." The sauna door creaked open, and a blast of cool air snapped us back to reality. A resort staff member poked his head in. "Everything okay in here?" Michael straightened, his face sliding back into the composed mask I knew so well. "Fine," he said, his tone clipped. The staff member nodded and left, the door hissing shut again. But the moment was broken. I stood, my legs unsteady, and grabbed my towel. "I need some air," I said, avoiding his eyes. "Ethan." "Wait," he started. But I was already moving, pushing through the door into the chilly hallway, my heart racing like I'd just escaped something I wasn't sure I wanted to leave behind. The cold air of the resort hallway hit me like a slap, grounding me just enough to realize I was trembling. My mind replayed Michael's words on a loop. "You make me want to break free." What the hell did that even mean? I leaned against the wall, the polished wood cool against my bare back, and tried to make sense of the storm he'd unleashed inside me. I wasn't naive. I'd felt the tension between us before those fleeting moments at Lucas's house, like when he'd hand me a coffee mug and our fingers would brush, or when he'd ask about my latest art project with an intensity that felt too personal. But I'd written it off as wishful thinking, a stupid crush on a man I could never have. Now, it was real, and it was terrifying. I wandered back to my room, the resort's plush carpets muffling my steps. Lucas was still out, probably charming that girl at the bar, oblivious to the fact that his dad had just turned my world upside down. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, the sauna's heat still clinging to my skin. Part of me wanted to unpack my bag, catch the next bus back to Denver, and pretend this never happened. But another part, the reckless part, wanted to go back to that sauna, to hear the rest of what Michael had to say. The next morning, I avoided the family breakfast. Lucas texted me, asking where I was, but I mumbled some excuse about a headache and stayed in my room, sketching furiously to calm my nerves. My pencil scratched out jagged lines, half-formed faces Michael's eyes, his jaw, the way his hands had hovered near me like he was afraid to touch. By noon, I couldn't stay cooped up any longer. I needed answers, or at least a distraction. I found Lucas by the lodge's massive fireplace, sprawled on a leather couch with a beer in hand. "You look like crap," he said, grinning. "Rough night." "Something like that," I muttered, dropping into the seat across from him. The fire crackled, its warmth a faint echo of the sauna's oppressive heat. "Where's your dad?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Lucas shrugged. "Probably off with Mom, planning some fancy dinner." "Why?" "No reason," I said too quickly. Lucas raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He launched into a story about the girl from the bar, but I barely heard him. My eyes kept darting to the lobby, half expecting Michael to appear. He didn't. Not then. But later that afternoon, as I was heading to the ski rental shop to return my gear, I saw him. He was outside, standing by a snow-covered bench, his breath visible in the crisp air. He wore a black parka, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. And when he saw me, his face softened in a way that made my chest ache. "Ethan," he called, his voice carrying over the crunch of snow. I hesitated, then walked over, my boots sinking into the powder. "We need to talk," he said, his tone urgent but quiet, like he was afraid someone might overhear. "About last night?" I asked, crossing my arms to hide how much my hands were shaking. He nodded, glancing around to make sure we were alone. "I didn't mean to scare you off. I couldn't keep it in anymore. Not with you." "Why me?" I blurted. "Why now? You've got a whole life, Sarah. Lucas. Everything. What am I supposed to do with this?" He flinched, like my words had cut deeper than I meant them to. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've spent years telling myself it didn't matter, that I could live with the lie. But seeing you here, being around you, it's like a wake-up call. I'm not happy, Ethan. I haven't been for a long time." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that he couldn't just upend his life or mine like this. But the pain in his voice was real, raw, and it mirrored something I'd felt for years, the ache of hiding who you are. of pretending for the sake of everyone else. I'm not asking you to fix me, he said, stepping closer. I just need you to know, to see me. I looked into his eyes, and for the first time, I didn't see Mr. Callahan, the untouchable patriarch. I saw Michael, a man who was scared, vulnerable, and reaching for something he'd been denied his whole life. I see you, I said softly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He smiled, a small, broken thing, and for a moment, we stood there in the snow, the world holding its breath. The snow crunched under our boots as we stood there, the silence stretching into something fragile and heavy. Michael's smile faded, replaced by a look of determination, like he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the tension, but my throat felt tight, my thoughts a jumbled mess of fear and longing. We can't do this here, I said finally, glancing at the resort's glowing windows. Families were spilling out onto the slopes, kids laughing, couples holding hands. It felt like a spotlight on us, exposing something that wasn't ready for the world. You're right, Michael said, his voice low. But I'm not letting this go. Not yet. He gestured toward a path leading away from the lodge, a narrow trail that wound through snow-laden pines. I hesitated, then followed, my heart hammering. The trail was quiet. The only sound our footsteps and the occasional rustle of branches shedding snow. We walked until we reached a small clearing, a bench overlooking a frozen lake, the mountains looming in the distance. It felt like we'd stepped out of the world, into a space where secrets could breathe. Michael sat, motioning for me to join him. I did, keeping a careful distance, though every nerve in my body was aware of how close he was. I owe you the truth, he said, staring out at the lake. All of it. I nodded, bracing myself. I knew I was different when I was 15. He began, his voice steady but laced with pain. Grew up in a small town. Church every Sunday. Football practice every afternoon. There was no room for someone like me. I buried it. Dated girls. Married Sarah because it was what you did. Built a life. Had Lucas. Told myself I could make it work. He paused, his hands clenching into fists. But it's like living half a life. You smile. You play the part. But inside, you're screaming. I thought it'd get easier with time. But it didn't. And then you came along. My breath caught. Me. You, he said, turning to face me. You were just a kid at first. Lucas's artsy friend. Always sketching in the corner. But you grew up. And you became yourself. Unafraid. Out. I envied that. And somewhere along the way, it turned into something else. His words hung in the air, raw and unguarded. I wanted to tell him I wasn't fearless. That coming out had cost me family. Friends. Pieces of myself I was still trying to get back. But I couldn't speak. All I could do was feel the weight of his confession, the way it reshaped everything I thought I knew about him. I'm not saying I have it all figured out. He went on. I don't. I've got a wife, a son, a life I can't just walk away from. But I can't keep pretending you don't matter. I stared at the lake, its surface a perfect mirror of the mountains, and felt my own walls crumbling. You matter to me too, I admitted, my voice barely audible. But it's messy. Lucas is my best friend. Sarah's been nothing but kind to me. And you're not free. I know, he said, his voice breaking. God, I know. I'm not asking you to fix this, Ethan. I just needed you to know who I am. Who I've always been. The honesty in his voice was a knife, cutting through my defenses. I wanted to hate him for putting me in this position, for making me feel things I had no right to feel. But I couldn't. Because I saw myself in him, the fear, the longing, the desperate need to be seen. We sat there for a long time, the cold seeping through my jacket. The silence between us no longer heavy, but shared. When we finally stood to head back, our shoulders brushed, and neither of us pulled away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lucas was passed out in the room next door, oblivious, while I lay awake, replaying every word, every look. Part of me wanted to run to Michael, to tell him I understood, that I felt it too. But another part screamed that this was a mistake, that crossing this line would destroy everything: Lucas's trust, Sarah's kindness, the fragile balance of my own life. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed space, time to think. I told Lucas I was heading back to Denver early, blaming a freelance deadline. He groaned but didn't argue, promising to catch up later. I avoided Michael, slipping out before breakfast. But as I waited for the shuttle, I saw him across the parking lot, watching me. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held a question I wasn't ready to answer. Back in Denver, the city's hum felt like a lifeline, pulling me out of the fog I'd been in since the sauna. My apartment was a mess: sketchpads scattered across the floor, takeout containers piling up, but it was mine. A space where I could breathe without Michael's presence clouding everything. I threw myself into work, designing logos for a local coffee shop. But every stroke of my pen felt like a distraction from the truth I was avoiding. Michael didn't call, didn't text. Part of me was relieved, but another part ached, like I'd left something vital behind in that snowy clearing. I kept picturing his face, the way his voice had cracked when he said he wasn't happy. I wanted to fix it, to fix him, but I knew that was a dangerous road. A week later, Lucas showed up at my door, unannounced, with a six-pack and a grin. "You bailed too early, man," he said, flopping onto my couch. "The rest of the trip was epic. You missed Dad's big speech at the resort dinner. Guys got away with words." I forced a smile, my stomach twisting at the mention of Michael. "Yeah, sorry. Work got crazy." Lucas didn't notice my unease, launching into stories about the trip, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept waiting for him to mention his dad, to give me some clue about what Michael was doing, thinking, feeling. But Lucas was oblivious, and I hated how much that relieved me. That night, after Lucas left, I got a text. Not from Lucas, from Michael. "Can we talk? I'm in Denver tomorrow." My heart lurched. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every rational part of me screamed to say no, to cut this off before it went any further. But my fingers moved before my brain could catch up. "Where?" He replied instantly, "Bluebird Cafe. Noon." The next day, I arrived early, claiming a corner table in the bustling cafe. The smell of coffee and fresh pastries filled the air, but I barely touched my latte, my nerves too raw. When Michael walked in, he looked different, less like the polished Mr. Callahan and more like a man carrying a secret too heavy to bear. He wore a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up, his hair slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. "Thanks for coming," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. His voice was soft, but his eyes were intense, searching mine for something I wasn't sure I could give. "Why are you here?" I asked, my tone sharper than I meant. "What do you want from me, Michael?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his hands clasped tightly. "I want to be honest," he said. "I want to stop hiding. But I don't know how to do that without hurting everyone I love." "Then why tell me?" I shot back, frustration bubbling up. "You think this is easy for me? You're Lucas's dad. You're married. I can't just..." I stopped, my voice catching. "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I know it's not fair. I'm not asking you to be anything. I just needed you to know who I am, because keeping it inside is killing me." I looked at him, really looked, and saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of years spent pretending. I'd been there, in my own way, hiding who I was until I couldn't anymore. But I'd had less to lose, no wife. No kid. No empire built on a lie. I get it, I said finally, my voice softer. I do. But it's not just about you. It's about Lucas, Sarah, me. If we do this, whatever this ice, it's going to break things. He nodded, his jaw tight. I know. But I can't go back to the way things were. Not after saying it out loud. We sat in silence, the cafe's chatter filling the space between us. I wanted to reach across the table, to touch his hand, to tell him we'd figure it out. But I didn't. Because I wasn't sure we could. Give me time, I said at last. I need to think. He nodded, his expression a mix of relief and pain. Take all the time you need, he said. I'm not going anywhere. But as I left the cafe, the weight of his words settled over me like snow, heavy and cold. I wasn't sure if I was running toward him or away from him, but I knew nothing would ever be the same. The next few weeks were a blur of avoidance and obsession. I threw myself into work, sketching until my hands cramped. But Michael was everywhere in the lines of my drawings, in the quiet moments when my mind wandered. I didn't text him back, didn't call, but his presence lingered like a ghost. Lucas noticed something was off. You're weird lately, he said one night over pizza at my place. Like, quieter than usual. Everything okay? I shrugged, shoving a slice in my mouth to avoid answering. How could I tell him? Hey, your dad confessed he's been hiding who he is for years. And oh, by the way, he might have feelings for me. The thought made my stomach churn. Lucas was my best friend, the one who'd stuck by me when I came out, when my dad called me a disappointment. Betraying him felt like betraying myself. But the pull toward Michael was undeniable. Late at night, I'd replay our conversations. The way his voice softened when he said my name. The way his hand had almost touched mine. It was reckless, dangerous, but it was also real, a connection I'd never felt with anyone else. One evening, I broke. I texted him, meet me at City Park. 8 p.m. The park was quiet when I arrived, the air crisp with the first hints of spring. Michael was already there, sitting on a bench by the lake, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. He stood when he saw me, his expression cautious but hopeful. I wasn't sure you'd reach out, he said, his voice low. I wasn't sure I would either, I admitted, shoving my hands in my pockets. This is a lot. He nodded, stepping closer. I know. I'm sorry for putting you in this position. But I meant what I said. Ethan, you make me feel like I can be myself. For the first time in years. His words hit me hard, stirring something I'd tried to bury. What do you want this to be? I asked, my voice shaking. Because I can't do halfway. I can't be your secret. I don't want you to be, he said fiercely. I want to do this right. I'm going to tell Sarah. I'm going to tell Lucas. I can't keep living a lie. My heart stopped. You're going to come out. He nodded, his jaw tight. I have to. For me. For you. For them. They deserve the truth, even if it hurts. I wanted to believe him, but the fear was overwhelming. Lucas is my best friend, I said. If you do this, it's going to change everything. He might hate me. Hate us. I know, Michael said, his voice raw. But I can't keep pretending. And I don't want to lose you. He reached for my hand. And this time, I didn't pull away. His touch was warm, grounding. And for a moment, I let myself imagine a world where this could work, where we could be together, where he could be free. But reality crashed in. What if it's too much? I asked. What if you lose everything? Then I'll rebuild, he said, his voice steady. With you, if you'll have me. I didn't know what to say. The park, the lake, the city lights, they all faded, leaving just us. standing on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful. I squeezed his hand, my heart racing, and nodded. Okay, I whispered. But we do this together. He smiled, a real smile, and for the first time, I saw hope in his eyes. But as we walked back to my apartment, hand in hand under the cover of darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into a storm, one that might tear us apart before it set us free. The next month was a whirlwind of quiet moments and impossible choices. Michael started unraveling his life with a courage that left me in awe. He told Sarah first, in a conversation he described as the hardest of his life. She cried, he said, but she also listened. And when he told her about me, she didn't scream or throw things, just sat there, silent, her face a mask of hurt and understanding. They agreed to separate, to give each other space to figure out what came next. Lucas was harder. Michael asked me to be there when he told him, and I agreed, though every part of me dreaded it. We met at Lucas's apartment, a cramped loft in downtown Denver. Lucas sat on his couch, his easy grin fading as Michael spoke. I've been lying to you, Michael said, his voice steady but heavy. I'm gay. I've known it for years, but I couldn't face it. Not until now. Lucas's eyes flicked to me, then back to his dad. And Ethan? He asked, his voice tight. Michael nodded. He's part of this. I care about him. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas stood, pacing the small room, his hands clenched. You're telling me you're leaving Mom for my best friend? He snapped, his voice rising. Ethan, you knew about this, and you didn't tell me. I didn't know how, I said, my voice shaking. I didn't want to hurt you. Hurt me? Lucas laughed, a bitter sound. You're my best friend. He's my dad. And you're, what? Together. It's not like that, I said, but the words felt hollow. It's exactly like that. Lucas shot back. He turned to Michael. You've got a whole life, Dad. A family. And you're throwing it away for what? A midlife crisis. Michael flinched but didn't back down. I'm not throwing anything away, he said. I'm trying to be honest. For once. Lucas shook his head, grabbing his jacket. I need space, he said, and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The weeks that followed were brutal. Lucas stopped answering my texts, and though Michael kept me updated, I could see the toll it was taking on him. He moved into a small apartment, started therapy, began rebuilding his life as an openly gay man. But every step forward came with a cost: friends who drifted away, business partners who raised eyebrows, a son who couldn't look at him. Yet through it all, we held on to each other. Quiet nights in my apartment, cooking dinner together, stealing moments of laughter and warmth. Michael's courage inspired me, made me want to be braver, to love harder. And slowly, I started to believe we could make it. One evening, as we sat on my balcony overlooking the city, Michael took my hand. I don't regret this, he said, his voice soft but sure. Not you. Not us. I squeezed his hand, my heart full. Me neither, I said. Months later, Lucas reached out. A tentative text, then a coffee meeting. He was still hurt, still angry, but he listened. He didn't forgive us. Not fully, but he didn't shut us out either. It was a start. Michael's life wasn't perfect. Neither was mine. But as we stood together, watching the sun set over Denver's skyline, I realized something. Love, real love, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, scars and all, and choosing each other anyway. And in that choice, we found something worth fighting for, a truth that set us both free.